Well, hello everyone. I am pleased to be joined by Sean Cooney, and we're going to bring you another podcast called Perspectives by Splunk. And this podcast is intended to give our listeners the executive takes on topics covering cybersecurity and technology innovations for leaders by leaders. And we're excited today to have Juliana Vida joining us to have a chat about some of the interesting challenges that leaders across the public sector may be facing and how her experiences may be useful. So Juliana, who exactly is Juliana Vida?
An enigma, truly.
Oh.
No. Thanks, Corey. It's great to be here with you and Sean.
Absolutely.
Now at Splunk, I'm the Chief Strategic Advisor for our public sector. So I lead a team of industry advisors and evangelists who talk with customers about why they should care about technology, how it can help them achieve their mission. And I come to Splunk from a full career in the United States Navy, and most of my career had nothing to do with technology. I was a ship driver and a helicopter pilot, and then I, by chance, just was told to go take a job supporting a CIO in the Pentagon, and that was when I pivoted into technology. And I bring that I'll say, background of non-technical, not related to cyber or technology. I bring that background to be able to tell stories and have relevant conversations with leaders across all parts of the government, not just technologists, not just cybersecurity professionals.
Yeah.
And it's fun, exciting, and I feel like we're really making a positive difference for the public sector.
Nice. Now, I do remember seeing in your bio, you've also spent some time in the analyst community,
Yep.
which I think is an interesting perspective. What was that like, moving from sort of that work in the Navy, leading into, and now you're in an analyst position? That's got to be kind of an interesting transition.
Right. Well, I actually wasn't an analyst. I worked at a large IT research and advisory company that starts with a G, and but I was not an analyst. I was an advisor, and so I used the research and content that the analysts put together in conversations with CIOs in the federal government to help them be better leaders, be more effective, drive innovation. And so it was a great stepping stone between purely internal-facing government technology policy to now external-facing, working from the vendor side in conversations with the government side. Yeah. So it's been I could not have architected a better career. It's pretty awesome.
Sounds like a fantastic career. Yeah, great. So in your career, obviously you've spoken to a whole bunch of public sector organizations, both working there and whilst you're here at Splunk now as well. What do you think the biggest challenges are, both from cyber leaders and technology leaders? What's keeping them up at night?
Well, what's keeping them up at night from a technology perspective is often just the, even though they have the desire to move faster, innovate, take advantage of all the great technologies that keep coming on the market, they are often slowed down just by the pace of change in the government. But the good news is that they do have the intent. You know, they do have the excitement. They do have the mindset, and more they're opening their arms to what can we do with commercial technology, which was not the case 10 years ago. Yeah. It was we're special and different in the government. We don't want anything to do with. Broad statement, but there wasn't a lot of trust.
Yeah,
you know, a lot of that is breaking down now, but they're still kind of mired in this, how slow the government can move. Yeah. But I am convinced that we just need to keep coming together, public-private partnerships or industry and public sector engagement, and we'll get there, because the mix of those two different domains, that's where the magic happens. Yeah, and there's a lot of leaders that really want to do it. So we're going to keep moving forward.
Yeah, it's interesting. Anytime I think about the challenges facing federal, it's an interesting juxtaposition, right? You have some of the most innovative, interesting technology in the world being produced by government and government-funded organizations, right? Yet you also, like, if you compare, like in many cases, those same organizations to public sector or private sector versions, you're like, well, maybe they're not quite as advanced in terms of their digital transformation journey. So how do you think those leaders are actually practically handling that juxtaposition, that reality that, it is hard, but they're capable?
Yeah. You know, I like to use the analogy, I think this is really appropriate here with your question, and people have all kinds of stereotypes about government employees and people who support the government. And you'd say, like, on the downside, people say, oh, well, folks go into the government and they never leave, But the good side is folks go in the government and they never leave. So, and the reason that I think that's good is because you don't go into the government to make money or to get rich.
Yeah.
You go in because you have a heart for public service, because you care about making the world a better and safer place, and delivering sublime services to citizens and residents. And industry cannot compete with that.
Yeah.
So the leaders that really get it, and that I think are taking advantage of the resources that they do have, are the ones who are taking that domain expertise and that desire for public service and sprinkling in the commercial technology where they can, and that's where they get the most results. Are all leaders there? No, but even on the industry side, not all leaders are moving as fast in a positive direction. So that's how I like to look at it, is that we have more people that are realizing that there's value on both sides,
Yeah.
and it's an accelerant, when you bring in the public and the private sector expertise.
So maybe there's a follow-on question there then. So I have a similar, excuse you.
Yeah.
I have a similar career history to you, obviously nowhere near as great as yours, actually. I'm quite inspired. But most of my career has been in the public sector, but in Europe. Public-private sector relationships aren't maybe quite as well as established in the UK, maybe not as much as they are in the US. So maybe what's your view on how public-private sector relations are going in the US, in particular? Well, I guess globally, really, but in the US, really. In particular, how that really drives innovation.
Well, I think just like there's more openness and transparency on the government side than there's ever been before.
Right.
There's also there's accelerating progress towards this public-private partnership.
Yeah.
And that's for a bunch of reasons, but there have been enough proofs of concept by this point. There have been enough stories and real-life world events that have shown the value of bringing the two together, that people who kind of pushed against that in the past, oh, we don't trust you, your technology is not secure enough, now they don't really have those, I don't want to call them excuses, but they don't have those reasons to push back anymore. Yep. And unfortunately, I think a good example right now is the war in Ukraine. It's super unfortunate, understatement of the world, to talk about there being goodness coming out of the war, but industry jumped in and they threw in technology and ideas and resources that then generate the good ideas on the sides of the Ukrainians. Like, we can do this.
Yeah.
Because people get stuck in what they know today and what resources they have today. And when they have industry coming in and opening up their eyes to all the exciting things that government may not be able to get to, all of them, but they can move the needle faster towards really cool, innovative, modern technologies.
It's funny how a crisis can drive innovation.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. Actually, that's probably that's kind of an interesting place we're at now, is that we've had this innovation. Oftentimes, this digital transformation was the wrecking ball was COVID, right? We had to move everything to digital, and I think that I'd be curious your take on, we've had digital transformation get accelerated. There's probably some technical debt that was accrued in that process.
Yeah.
So what are some of the unique things that federal leaders are thinking about in terms of, in my journey towards resilience, right? This increase, improving my cybersecurity posture with this increased threat landscape and potentially this technical debt. What are some of those unique challenges that they're facing that, that GDI is like, hey, this is a way to attack that?
Yeah, I mean, as unsexy and civil as it might sound, I think honestly one of the biggest barriers that most agencies have overcome from the pandemic has been just the notion of how work has to get done.
Yeah.
That you must be in your seat, you must be at your desk. Clearly, that was blown asunder. That idea during and after the pandemic. Now, some agencies are kind of slowly moving back to the middle, but I think that's true in industry too. Yep. We went fully remote, and now some organizations are coming back. Yeah. But with the federal government, it's decades of that mindset and that behavior and that this is the way we've always done it, that fortunately has been disproven. And now it's just a matter of reminding leaders of this is why you should keep going towards a modern future. Remember all the work you got done during the pandemic when you had to send everybody home and you figured out a way to make it work. So we just have to kind of keep nudging them back to the positive and reminding them of, you all figured this out, and look at the advancements that you made, and let's keep going in that direction as opposed to the very strong pull of, but we've always done it this way. We just have to keep them going that way.
Yeah.
So we've managed, what, 10 minutes now without saying the term artificial intelligence. I've
yes.
said it, bingo, thank you. So how do you think artificial intelligence plays into public sector at the moment?
Well, I'll just start by saying this, that I think a takeaway is that people should not expect that there are going to be these huge reprogramming of budgets and dollars into big programs right now because of the explosion of generative AI. AI is always, like we know, this is not anything new.
Yeah.
It's just that now it's in the hands of everyone. It's been democratized and it's put in the hands. So while it would be nice to think that, wow, this is going to be the burning platform that accelerates some of these old programs or maybe causes a reprioritization of where we spend a lot of money, I don't see that happening in a big way in the short term.
Okay.
However, what I do see is more the average person, people drive the budget, decision makers, policy makers, they're, from whatever specialty that they're in the government, they have to be aware now of what this AI stuff can do for us, and that can only be positive. It can accelerate contracting cycles, it can accelerate policy development, it can accelerate funding, and financial aspects of the mission. And so I think all of that is great groundwork to move the government into a more modern direction using AI. I caution people to be wringing their hands about, oh my gosh, what's the big, earth-changing development that's going to happen in the government tomorrow, because it's just not very likely to happen.
Yep. One of the things though that I'm curious, and it's a public and private concern, is artificial intelligence like as you said, burst into the consciousness, the collective consciousness of so many folks, specifically that weren't working in technology and understood what was happening over the last 20 years as we've come out of the last AI winter. Do you think that there's any really meaningful legislation, not about the spending and how the government integrates this technology, but its use, right? And to legislate the private sector on how we're actually developing this AI. Do you think that the U.S. government is going to be able to come up with a meaningful piece of legislation in the short term?
It depends on what you mean by short term. And I only say that with a bit of a hesitation because just in March, the administration put out a national cybersecurity strategy. And then just last week or 2 weeks ago, there was an implementation plan of that strategy. Okay. And the importance of cybersecurity has been, top of mind and coming out of, topics on the Hill and in Congress and in the government for, years. And we're just now getting this implementation plan. So I would just say kind of use that as a gauge to how quickly you think policy might come out. I do know that there are big thinkers, innovative thinkers, and leaders in government agencies that are talking. They're talking about the privacy implementation and the, well, that's really the big one. It's really how far do we go? What kind of boundaries do we put in place? I'm just gonna, if I had to pick do I think anything's coming in the short term or not? I'm just gonna have to be honest and say not, but perhaps the pace will be faster than policy and regulations, legislation that's come around other technologies.
Gotcha.
So I guess the government does a whole bunch of things, missions as it were, that the private sector just can't or won't ever do.
Yeah.
So it's hard to compare what they do maybe with what we see other organizations do, right? So which of these missions do you think is likely to be most affected by artificial intelligence? Let's start in the short term, in the near term.
Honestly, I think for the public sector, it's probably the I'll call the more business type of mission. So processing of taxes and maybe delivery of, in the education space, maybe student loan financing and housing loans and policies around those things. I haven't talked to, I'm closest to the Department of Defense just because of my background, and having talked to some of those leaders, I don't think that there are going to be huge shifts in where we put money in terms of warfighting platforms, buying more ships or buying more aircraft. Maybe the technology that goes in them, perhaps, but I truly think like the more business-focused missions, they can probably achieve the quickest wins in those kinds of agencies, for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, so beyond AI, right? AI is obviously something interesting, but I'm always curious, like what other disruptive technology trends are people focusing on? Folks that are in leadership positions have that visibility. What are some of those other trends that you're hearing from your folks in the DOJ or others?
I would say quantum, which I'm not an expert on, but there are lots of think tanks and lots of research and development labs and all of that looking at how do we take advantage of quantum and edge technology too. So back to the government, or back to the Department of Defense, and even the State Department, who have offices all around the world, and the embassies and the posts outside the U.S. They're often thinking about, what if there's disrupted communicate? What if the satellites go out? What if GPS is disrupted? And so that kind of edge technology is really top of mind for those more global and tactical focused organizations.
Excellent. Well, Juliana, it's been fantastic to catch up with you. We appreciate you providing us your perspectives on what's happening across technology and cybersecurity in the public sector.
My
And we hope
pleasure.
everybody will continue to tune in to the podcast and check out splunk.com/perspectives for more takes from our executive teams on cybersecurity and technology by leaders and for leaders. I'm Corey Minton. Thanks for listening.
really care what you say, Mick. I do think WannaCry was a bigger deal than SolarWinds.
I don't. I really don't.
No,
and
it's
that's
ransomware.
because I know you enjoy North Korean more than anything else.
It is my
I
favorite
get it.
cuisine, gruel and sadness.
I can tell by the bot scenarios earlier on that were North Korean based. It was really a cuisine tribute for you.
Taedong Gong, ATP, forever faithful.
Forever faithful. Well, hey, folks, welcome to a late night edition, I guess if you're on the East Coast, of a kind of coffee talk variation. We're doing a panel tonight for the Blue Nomicon book that the Surge team released back at RSA. And with me tonight, I have got Jason Lee, CISO for Splunk, Ryan Kovar, Distinguished Security Strategist, Sydney Howard, who is Threat Hunter and Stroganer, and Paul Kurtz. And if you haven't heard of Paul Kurtz, wow, you read the book. So let's get right into it. So thanks for coming out, everyone. The first question, and this is a big question I'm asking everyone because I've been requested to get video footage of it. Why is contributing to a book like Blue Nomicon important? So I want to start with Paul, and we'll work our way back.
Yeah, when I think about it, there's so many people out there that kind of want to understand people's journeys, their experiences. And I think it's really important to get the word out and make it accessible. So I was happy to be part of this whole project, just because it's creating a narrative, telling a story, and giving people more context about how events unfold. And not to give away the story, but
But you do understand your stories are different than most people's stories, right?
I guess they're a little bit different. Yeah.
So, Sydney, how about you?
So honestly, I was very honored to be asked to be a part of this and contribute a story. My story is a little more on the technical side. For those who haven't read it yet, it's on threat hunting. It's a little bit more beginner threat hunting. But I think it's really important just to have all these authors together. And I love the fact that we took people in the industry, just all different types of individuals. Some people were, are in leadership. Some people are boots on the ground, say more like me. And it really provides this inspiration for a lot of folks to go out there and tackle security, reading about all of our experiences.
For me, what was important was having something to do. We have a research team. We're expected to publish things. It seemed like we get a lot done with a single book. But Mick and I were talking. There's a gentleman at Splunk, James Young, and a lot of it was around how do we encapsulate. There's a great white paper about an anthropologist who studied a security operations center, a SOC. And one of the things he talks about is the tribal knowledge that happens in the security community and how hard it is to pass that on. And during COVID, one of the things I really noticed was the hallway conference talks, the discussions in the restaurant, the late night old fashions or virgin mojitos were not happening, and part of that culture was lost. And we were thinking about how do we continue that tradition via the written form, and that's kind of where Blue Nomicon was born, and we wanted to reach out and find people who did interesting things who not everyone could talk to at all the conferences or intimate settings, and that's why we did it.
All right, I was really like a last-minute addition on this, so I came in
Jason, it's
really
not like
hot
you were
and quick.
hired partway through and you had a title. No, you're more than that. You're more than a title. You're a person too.
It was fantastic. I really loved the opportunity to be able to put that in there, and really I wanted to focus in on leadership and how to build relationships. It's just part of the job is just when you're constantly going through and getting into the technical work, there's kind of the soft side of things, and I really enjoyed going into that and being able to share from a career perspective how to do that growth and kind of what I've seen is an easier path on building great relationships and community.
Also, you understand your stories are not normal stories. So building on your essay, I want to talk about that. You are the cyber Dale Carnegie and a tribute to him. You discussed leadership and influence. And Paul, your career spans decades, agencies, departments. You have
call him old?
Yes, and you call me old back. It's fine. Like, you have walked the walk that we all talk about. You have seen the things when they happened. Your career has spanned public sector into private. And what has been the most common trait in leadership, successful leaders that you've seen? Because you have seen both sides of that.
Yeah, absolutely. A good leader is an excellent listener. and willing to let people get their ideas on the table, fuse them together with other ideas from that part of the organization. But it's also, a good leader is, is also being able to tap the brakes. But tap the brakes in such a way that it doesn't destroy the confidence of those that are working with you. Nobody likes to be yelled at, and I just think if you're a good listener and you're giving good guidance, you succeed and you build a good organization. Like in the context of building TrueStar, Patrick and I, we worked together very closely, but we assembled a team and we listened to everybody. Everybody had a role, and it was wonderful to see in the White House context. That gets bureaucratic, so there's a lot more fiefdoms to deal with.
It's a different kind of office politics, I guess.
But nonetheless, the principle still applies. I would, when I was on the NSC, I really made it a priority to connect with the agencies, to get to know people, to understand where they are coming from. So when you really needed something to get done, it would get done.
And Ryan, what about, you are the leader of Surge. We have a team that spans several continents, and your leadership has seen the team grow pretty drastically, or dramatically in about 6 months, 9 months.
Yeah.
We've really jumped in front of a lot of things. Do Paul's words ring true to you? That's you listening. You're a great listener, not just because you're my boss, but you're a great friend.
It does. One of the things I learned very early in my career, and one advantage actually that Mick and I both had, was in the U.S. Navy, you're given hundreds of hours of leadership training. And one of the things we went through on that was, one of which is listen to people when they're having problems, have empathy when they're having problems, and the third is make sure they're not left on shore when the ship departs. 2 of those are still very applicable, and we kind of go through that quite a bit. The other thing I learned that I believe is really important for a leader is to give people the ability to do their own tasks their own way they wish, give a deliverable, give a timeline, and then step back and say, come to me when you have a problem or if you need assistance, but otherwise how you choose to complete is what you're doing. And I think that works really well in cyber, how you choose to do analysis, how you choose to do a SOAR playbook, how you choose to write a Blue Navicon book, and which colors you select are really up to you.
Really, that's, now, hearing that, I'm like, you know what, he did it. All right, man, good luck. That's all right. I understand the deadline now. I was like, all right, I'll see you in February, or not. So,
And can I jump in on that for a second? So, I mean, for me, leadership doesn't necessarily mean you're a manager. Everybody thinks okay, you're a manager and you're a leader. To me, I always tell this one story. My team's heard it a ton of times. It's when I bring somebody into the team, it's like, okay, so I pay you for 10 donuts. If you make 10 donuts next year, okay, why should I pay you any more? If you make 20 donuts, fantastic. But if you teach 20 other people how to make 20 donuts, that's leadership. You're empowering and teaching and mentoring and growing others. Really think that rings true, and it's something that I really enjoy, and I always bring it up. Sydney's laughing, so she's heard it before.
That exponential growth is huge, yeah.
So, Sydney,
now
do
I'm
you...
just worried about the health of our internal security team and
Yeah, I
diabetes.
could
This is really the...
I could use a
It's all
little
about the donuts, come on.
We stopped hunting threats, now we hunt sprinkles.
Well, because we know some of the security teams, I'm afraid Chili will be introduced to these donuts, and that will not be good.
right.
What's up, Tony?
Cover Tony's ears.
So, Sydney, the ever-changing technical landscape pretty much dictates you have to stay sharp.
Yep.
If you're not learning, you're losing every day. It just feels like you're falling behind. Your essay on Lawbin, specifically for Mac, is I would say not recent, but it's a relatively new attack vector that we've seen.
Yeah.
So, what tips outside of your essay would you recommend to operators? How do you stay sharp?
I think just keeping up on what's going on in the cyber threat landscape. So whether that be reading some sort of social media like Twitter or something similar, or just keeping up on, I am avid subscriber to email digests. So
Those are around?
they are.
Wow.
Tech and Engineering Weekly, and
Do you use Eudora as your email client, or are you a Pine gal?
and This Is Forensics are my 2 favorite. It's basically just a roundup of what happened in the last week. I don't have the time to sit on the social media platform and monitor all the tweets and see what's coming in and what's new. So really, that really helps me. And also just networking with people. in your industry. Like I have friends that I've worked with in the past or people at Splunk that we're just constantly sharing what's going on in the community. That's really probably the best way to stay really sharp.
Paul, your essay, and anyone out there, I would honestly skip the entire book and just read Paul's one. It just blew me away. Your career, to me, is one of the people I've always looked up to. Your essay centered around like an aha moment in your career. Like when you're like, hey, I work in cyber now. I'm a cybersecurity professional. And yours was, all right, no, that was happened. Sydney, has that moment happened for you? Are you like, oh, I work in cyber? Because we all know imposter syndrome is a very big thing. And I think that kind of stays with you a little bit. But have you had that I am a cybersecurity professional moment?
I think I've had it probably early in my career. I was trying to think about this, but early in my career, not as cool as the White House, but I was working over the weekend. I was actually on call, and I got an incident from it's like a snort rule, and it was I was investigating. I luckily got a PCAP, and I thought it was a web shell, but I wasn't quite sure, and so I dug a little bit more into it, and I was like, this looks bad. This is on an externally facing web server. I need to escalate this, and I did, and it turned out to be a huge ordeal, and I got a ton of kudos for it. So it was really big for me. It gave me a lot of confidence and encouragement, because at that time I barely knew what a VPN was. Still very much in the learning phase.
But I would say, you're one of the best threat hunters, and I'm not going to say the word out there. So, but you constantly stay sharp and sharpen those skills. How do you not lose sight of that motivation? Like you're saying you're in learning mode, but you're always in learning mode, wouldn't you? That's your whole career until you become like the rest of us and don't have real jobs and just talk about when we did. Like so, staying sharp technically. How does that translate? Like, we don't have to stay as sharp technically in our roles, right? Jason, you do, but from a different perspective than Sydney, right?
I like to say I can once in a while spell security. Woo! That works well,
Remember, no X.
That's right. That's right.
Perhaps you didn't go to RSA conference. So how you're staying like ahead of the news. So on Surge, our perspective is different. So I guess behind the people part, like people connection's always there.
Yep.
Staying current on things. How does that lens shift for you as the CISO of Splunk? Like you're not learning like the technical details of say a SolarWinds or a, I guess, WannaCry, but you better know the ins and outs, the details, right?
Believe it or not, I am on some email lists, so shout out to Sydney.
So fun.
So I still keep up with that. Once in a while, I'll ask the team, but I love learning from my team. I love listening and learning, and I'm just into constant always want to understand what they're doing, what are the kind of new techniques going out there. So I still want to understand it. I really am a technologist at heart. I've got like a 3D printer behind me at home. Everybody gives me a hard time for that, but I just constantly learn and love doing that.
What was that aha moment for you?
Yeah, so I'm going to totally date myself, but back in the day, I actually started as an IT auditor. I worked for an accounting firm, and this new sort of thing was like, why don't we start auditing the IT systems? And so I started actually learning about a little bit about SQL injection, things like that, and hired at Microsoft as an IT auditor, and then lo and behold, they created a security team there, and they're like, Jason, I think you need to come over here. And I was like, oh crap, I do know security. And so I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I'm like, I'm not sure, I'm just like this auditor person. I'm just like trying to find these issues. But then kind of, they kept me, and I ended up staying for about 15 years, but it was really like after like the second or third job, I'm like, I think I got this, and I actually love this. Like, this is great. I love solving things and finding things.
So Ryan, what about you at Not the Pie Factory?
That's a longer story. For me, I think it's interesting when you say cybersecurity. It's a very there's some people in the audience who are going to say no, it's infosec. Others say cyber. I look at it as both. So for me, I think I started as a system administrator who moved into auditing and regulatory and compliance, and that was very information security for me. And then I kind of fell into what I consider to be cybersecurity, and I was working an incident with an Iranian threat actor, and I suddenly realized like I knew where he lived, I knew what his children's names were, I had figured out all this stuff, I had mapped out his calendar because he was doing this stuff around, like I'm like, okay, well this is this holiday, so he's probably not, and suddenly I'm like, oh crap, I do this for a living. Like what do I do again? Like, this is awesome.
That's
And
not
it is,
cyber, that's counterintelligence.
Yeah,
you know that,
it's-
right? I'm just to be clear.
Anyway, we had a great holiday in Dubai. We talked, we ate, we drank. It was great, but it was just one of those like, this is a really great job. What I get to do is really awesome, and I want to do more.
Can I just jump in on the terms like cybersecurity?
Because you were there the day it was coined, right?
I was recalling. I worked on the first national strategy to build to secure cyberspace, and we were having this debate at the White House as to would it be called a cybersecurity strategy, and at that time Bush was president, and there was this debate. It's like, well, is anybody going to really understand what cyber means? And well, it shouldn't be information security. And it went all the way to the chief of staff as to what this thing was going to be called. But ultimately, we did kind of went with the national strategy to secure cyberspace. We didn't get cybersecurity per se, but we got cyberspace. And it was just a really unique, like bizarre experience. I'm happy, we at least got cyber in the title.
And you avoided information superhighway.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you got that going
Yes.
for it.
And you didn't hyphenate it, so.
Yeah. That's where our tax dollars at work.
Yeah, we saved a hyphen. Billions of dollars saved in printed hyphens.
So we talk about community often. We've heard the people aspect of it. One of the things I've heard a lot over our time here at Conf, it's that listen, learn, adapt to all the things. And we were constantly listening, we're constantly learning. We talk about community, whether it's, you came from the InfoSec scene, like the hacker culture, whether you came from just the industry, or whether you grew up in the DC cyber tribe, as we colloquially call it. What does community mean to you in the cybersecurity sense, or the information security sense? I don't want to be pedantic, but it is InfoSec. And how has that definition changed as your career has changed? So I'll start with Ryan, because we've known each other about
Sure.
a super long time.
I think the interesting thing for me is as my peers have all gotten older and more gray and fat, unlike me, who's still a perfect Adonis of a man.
Are you saying something about me?
No,
Come on,
we're not
man.
you.
You're
No,
so-
no, but Mick.
Yes, I'm
used to
the
be
one that's let
beautiful.
go, not you.
It's been fascinating watching my friends and peers change their careers from I'm an incredible IC to I'm a leader to why don't we do this? This is the most important thing in the world, to going, yeah, that sucks, but we're not going to do anything about it. It's more important for the business to be running than you have perfect security. And that's been a fascinating journey. I mean, I went through it myself, but it's a community of people, and we're working together still. I'm still learning from my peers, but now we're also able to go down as the community grows and we introduce new people to it. We're also able to have this conversation of uplifting other people, and now they can ignore us like I once ignored other people. So that's great too. But it's the community is still there. It's very important to me. It's important to bring people in through it, and also I've shared that community for 10, 20 years of my career. And it's wonderful.
Sydney, how about you?
I think my idea of community, especially in terms of security, has changed quite a bit over time. In the beginning of my career, I did not really understand the concept of it or the fact that I needed that. I just did my job, went home. I didn't really jump into any of the communities. I think in my previous role is really when that changed. I met some people that really inspired me and were really supportive. They were like my hype squad in the corner that was really encouraging me and sharing all the cool things they were doing and made me want to do more. So I think really having that encouragement and that support from all the people in your network that you're constantly networking with, and keeping the networking up as the years go, is really important in how you keep that community and keep it growing and keep it a big part of your life.
What about you, Paul?
I'm struggling with this one a little bit because I was in the government for a while, and my community was the government. It was the national.
You know who you're
security
talking to,
space.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I am not unfamiliar.
Yeah. And then you go from government to, like, I started a trade association focused on cybersecurity, and that was like working with Capitol Hill. That's a totally different, it's associated with government, but it's a totally different game. But I was working with tech vendors, security vendors at times, so that was a community. And then, and then in the context of working overseas, working with organizations like the IAEA on nuke issues, or working in the context of doing a startup, they're all, when Patrick and I started TrueStar, the introduction to the VC community and playing, how do you meet the right folks in the VC community? How do you get that funding? And then how do you go sell the product? And
Right.
how do you find your way in the market? So all these, it's not one community. So I feel really blessed that I've had the opportunity to step through a whole bunch of different communities and have different challenges throughout my career.
I feel similar in that vein. Like my career is fairly similar to yours. I spent most of it in the public sector. My last, federal role at the White House, and then becoming the CISO for the Buttigieg campaign. It's a wild shift, And then coming here to Splunk, you have that government community, the individual computers, all the folks in the intelligence community, the other IC. And that's pretty much all you hang out with. And then in the DEF CON community, I've been going to DEF CON for a super long time, and that's a completely different community there. And I also teach lockpicking, and that third intersection is just a different community. And I think all of those are super valuable. I know you, when you were first starting off as IT auditor, like there wasn't a CISO Slack then, right?
No. I was going to say, there were two really communities that were important to me. I'd say I was early on, I call it, I was demoted to a manager. So I was made a people manager. I wasn't good enough to be an IC. So I really glommed onto kind of really management excellence, and kind of like what Sydney said, is I looked for mentors, finding, and I really, we called it the mothership. I was at Microsoft. I really grew up there for like 15 years. And so I was really, my community at that time was just how to become a better people manager and help my team to succeed more. And my principle now is my main job as a CISO is just to increase the value of everybody on my team. I want their resumes better working under me. I want them all worth more money, and they're worth more for Splunk. And so, and then now you alluded to is there's a CISO community out there, and yes, there is multiple Slack channels, but there's a lot of good interaction there. We help each other. It's, there really isn't, when you work for a CIO, you work for a chief legal officer.
It used to be you're on an island.
Right, that's right.
Like the CISO of the Buttigieg campaign, you're the only CISO ever, and so, hey, what?
Who can you
Just
talk
me,
to?
right.
You're like,
so I think communities like that are
that's
valuable.
right.
And again, I think it's changed over time, right? It's you never lose sight of all the communities you've been a part of, but I think the communities you participate in shift slightly. But apparently, email lists.
Where's that?
That is.
I mean, I thought we were going to talk about IRC when we went into community.
No,
Still a thing. They're just coming back around.
it's all right.
So we're running out of time, so I want to kind of wrap it. I want to give you guys a last question. What would you write in Volume 2, Jason?
Again, kind of to the theme that I would talk about is I would love to be able to talk about all the pitfalls of what not to do to go through your career to get to a CISO, to say like, here's what I've learned, what I did wrong. I would love to be able to kind of help and empower others about how to find your community and how to grow and really manage your own career. Like, I really don't think it's your boss's job to help you get promoted or to help you get other jobs. It's really, you gotta take that yourself, and I have a lot of passion about that space, so I'd really love to be able to do that kind of theme in the book.
All right, well, we'll come get you some money from you to fund it later.
All right, we'll keep that.
Okay. Ryan, what about you? You wrote the afterword. I mean, the forward. I wrote the afterword. Sorry.
I guess we could swap. I'd probably write the story of the Pie Factory when I went and did a.
You could just tell
audit.
the story of the Pie
Okay.
Factory now. I think everyone wants to hear it.
So we did an audit. This is years before Splunk, but we did an audit of an organization that was a grocer, and they had a large Pie Factory center. And at some point during the audit, I was talking to them, and I noticed they had a Class A network Visio diagram on the wall, and I thought that was really odd. You don't see like populated Class A networks very often. Kind of stuck in my head, and at one point we were going through, I was like, how do you deal with pen tests? Do you do this? He's like, we do, but they're not allowed to scan the Pie Factory. And I laughed, like, oh, what's that a euphemism for? He's like, no, you don't scan the Pie Factory. I said, oh, okay, you don't scan the Pie Factory. He's like, no, you do not scan the Pie Factory. I said, okay, we don't scan the Pie. Why don't we scan? He's open, pulls down volume 3, page 365, paragraph 4A of his documentation. He said, you will not scan the Pie Factory due to a vulnerability of UDP. I said, What's that mean? He's like, well, one day we had a pen tester in, and they did an Nmap scan very aggressively, and it went across the VPN, and it went into our pie factory, and it flipped over the sensors that did the baking of the pies, and it caused them to go from 375 to 875, and it burned all the pies, and so we don't scan the pie factory. Oh, cool, that's really reasonable. Like, what mitigating, what did you learn from that? What were your mitigations? And he said, we put it in the documentation, not to scan the pie factory. I said, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's risk accepted.
That's done. Yeah, risk accepted.
Risk accepted.
Pies are important.
Pies are important. Yeah, pies are critical infrastructure.
See what I just
Exactly,
did? Now he
exactly.
can't write that story in volume 2. He has to do something else.
That's right. That's
Eh?
good.
Sydney, how about you? What threat are we going to deal with in about a year and a half?
And what type of pastry is it?
Ooh, if it's a pastry, it's probably like a chocolate cake or something.
I think we're hungry. Donuts, pies, cakes. Yeah.
But
know it.
as far as another essay, I would say probably something on threat hunting again, but a little bit more advanced. One of the areas that I'm exploring right now that I know you talked about in the keynote is model-assisted threat hunting, so using machine learning and applying it to threat hunting. That's an area I really want to explore, and I think there's not a lot out there on getting into it, like the very intro of it, like how do I get it specifically set up what I need to really get there. And I think it's really important because something like adding machine learning to your threat hunting can really just secure or mature your threat hunting organization like super quickly, provide a lot of value.
Paul, what would you write for us again?
I'm struggling on this one too, but
Because you have a million stories.
I think I'm spending a lot of time just looking at AI and
I think you and
Everyone.
And so I get, kind of say, oh yeah, maybe I write something on AI, but I'm like, okay, what am I going to say? Am I going to really add value now? And I think the answer is probably no. It's probably not the right thing to do. What I would like to do is I've been toying with the idea of trying to write a fictional piece that would account for what could happen over the next 5 to 10 years, and how could AI, so to speak, play out. There's a lot of great books out there on AI, like AI 2041. It's one of my favorites, and just kind of toying with that of like looking at here's a story, but here's the technology behind it. I think it's a really interesting approach.
I think we also just learned we're going to have to fact check his AI hallucination essay upon submission. That's what I'm learning here.
It'll be our fanfic section of Blue Nomicon 2. Well, that's all the time we've got today. We can sit and rap for a bit. I do have so many more questions about the pie factory. But I think, so the reason I kind of put Blue Nomicon together is this thing called Seiki. It's a model by 2 Japanese researchers. There's something coming out next month that I wrote to it. The idea of tacit and explicit knowledge. So tacit knowledge is that on-the-job training, things you pick up, you never write down. And it's not that we don't write things down, it's that we don't write things down. And the other part of that is explicit knowledge, the things we do write down. So all the things you learn, some of the things, Paul, you talked about, Ryan, you talked about in your essays, are now codified. So someone's going to read that with the things they've picked up, all in their tacit knowledge, and will create more explicit knowledge. So that's the idea behind Blue Nomicon and Blue Nomicon again, if we do a volume 2, and we're probably going to do a volume 2. The idea of tacit knowledge, what would you say has been the tippiest tip that you've learned in your career that's not cyber related, not leadership related, just like for me, when I was working at the White House, I learned that when you go on the plane, everyone has a suit on, but when they get on the plane, everyone puts their sweatpants on. And no one mentioned that, so I'm on a flight to Israel, like in a suit, just sitting on the sidewall. So, like, are there any tips that you have in that vein?
Let's see here. I would say, for me, when I talk about moving around in jobs, one of the things that a lot of people do is you look for something that you fit all the requirements, and that should never be the case. I think it's like hardly anybody actually meets 100% of all the requirements in there. But some people that are very good have this mental block of like, oh, I don't meet this, so not going to apply. And I think that just limits people. And it's like, everybody that applies doesn't meet 100% of everything. And so really, that was one thing that I had to learn early on. And I just think that's just good general advice, is to look for something especially that makes you uncomfortable. Like that's even better. If there's something that
I think the kids call that shooting your shot, or
Sure,
maybe
sure.
they did like 4 or 5
Right.
years ago. I'm
Okay.
not 100% sure.
300 years ago, I think Hamilton. I'm
fair,
unclear about
fair.
that documentary. It was very confusing.
What about you?
Gosh, now I feel like we should have prepared for this one. For me, I think it's actually was in vain. One of my mentors, former president of revenue at Splunk, Susan St. Ledger, she used to say, it's not a career ladder, it's a career puddle. And by that, she meant you fill up buckets. You shouldn't think of your career as just a horizontal climb, but rather you should think about where do you generally want to go and what are the buckets you have to fill in your skills to be able to accomplish that. So if you're looking at becoming a threat hunter, do you know statistics? Like, do you understand adversaries? Do you know this? If you're looking at becoming a people leader, do you understand what motivates people? Do you understand the difference? You know, one of the lines that you said, which is I love, is people come to me often and say, I want to be a manager. And I say, why? It's a horrible, horrible job. And they go, no, I want to be a leader. And I was like, well, those are not the same
Those are,
thing.
yeah, those are different
Some of
things.
the best leaders I've
Yes.
ever met are individual contributors,
That's
and
right.
some of the worst leaders I've ever met are managers. So, like, when you say you want to go into a leadership position, what do you actually mean? And then how are you going to accomplish that? Like, what skills do you need to grow to do that? Because you can do a lot of leadership as a team lead or as an IC leading a project. So I kind of go back to the buckets of what are you trying to do and stop thinking of it as a climb, but rather as a journey.
So mine is going to be really tactical and very simple. Document all the things, whether it is your working tickets, document it all for later, share all that knowledge out with people, whether it be for processes, document it all. It's only going to help later down the road when you in a crisis and you need to look at things, or even in your career. Like, create a brag sheet of what you're working on. Make sure you update it weekly, maybe even monthly, quarterly, like whatever works for you. That's only going to help when it comes to review time or when you're trying to get that promotion.
What about you, Paul? Like, I know there's a million things.
Well, I think it's reading. I spend a lot of time reading. I try to allot at least an hour or so a day to read, and it's not reading just cyber stuff. Yeah, I read, got to keep up on it, but I read
policy documents now, and like,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sounds
but,
riveting.
it's not
They
at
actually
all.
are.
But
I
like, hey,
disagree.
Yeah.
there's a new cyber policy rolling out. I feel like I should kind of know the details of it. And operator Mick would have no. What are you doing? Like, you don't read that. That's boring. And because it's documented, we have the anti-documentation clause in our reading.
So you're saying you're following all the policies at work then? You've read all the security policies and you're on it.
We
right?
recite
Not
the UAP
yours.
every day before our team meeting.
Good, good, good.
I do. I just
we-
recite it,
I read them before bed.
Yeah.
Then I fall asleep.
I do the pledge of Jason, it's before every...
Something, use USBs. And
It's fun when you read things that, like say Michael Lewis's Moneyball, and one of my favorite books. And lots of times when I read books, I find it gives me an idea that I hadn't thought of previously that could be applied to cyberspace. In Moneyball, it was all about the data. How would you put together a baseball team that is not based on just the scouts that are out there trying to pick out the right baseball player? It's like, how do we look at the stats? What are the right stats? How do you put that data together and come up with a great baseball team? And it changed the game of baseball. And when I look at like cyberspace and cybersecurity, it's all about the data. It's making sure you know what you know, and you can work the analytics in many different ways to try to get the best insight possible. So if you read outside your field, sometimes it helps you explain to others what we're really trying to do.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, I think that's all the time we've got for our panel. We're going to wrap this up so we can move on to a very special interview with Jake Williams. But I want to thank all of you for coming on the panel tonight. It has been a privilege to sit next to all of you and talk about the book we wrote together. So I'm really excited about it. I really hope everyone out there watching and that has a copy has gotten value out of it. And if you have, email Jason and let him know so he'll pay for us to do it again. I think that's the
Probably
overall
send it
plan.
in a PDF or a USB drive.
It
straight
has to
the
come in
Splunk
an
office.
email list first
Yes.
for me to be able to see it.
That's your DDR.
That's right.
But we have some copies here at Conf. There is a digital version we're releasing, so be sure to be on the lookout for that. And thanks for watching.